In this tutorial, I'm going to walk you through the trickier parts of this blanket. It's called the 10-Stitch Blanket, and it's by Frankie, who is Rosemily on Ravelry. This is a free pattern, and if you'd like to get your pattern to follow along, I'll give you a link here on screen as well as in the video description below. Now, I've had so many requests for this as a tutorial, and it just happens to lend itself really well for a video tutorial, because the most difficult part of this whole blanket is right at the beginning. If I can walk you through the trickier parts of this, the rest of the blanket will be a breeze. I want to talk a little bit about Frankie, the designer of this. She has dozens of patterns out, and they're all free, all available on Ravelry. And she doesn't charge for any of them. Instead, she asks that if you like her patterns, that you make a donation to the Children's Liver Foundation. So it was really nice. I really enjoyed working with Frankie on this tutorial and meeting her and hearing her story. So if you like this pattern, a couple things: you can make a donation to the Children's Liver Foundation, and she gives you all the links for that. And you can also check out some of her other patterns that evolved from this design. And I want to get the names right. Here are a few of them. The 10-stitch twist, 10-stitch triangle, double 10-stitch, 10-stitch zigzag, 10-stitch wave, and those are the ones that she just had off the top of her head. They all use the same techniques. So if once you've made this one, you enjoy it, you can try some of her other ones. They're all well-written patterns and nice designs. As far as yarn and needles for this goes, you can use any yarn, any needles, any gauge, and this pattern's going to work. Really, the rule of thumb is if you like the fabric you're creating, you're good. Go with it. Now, a couple different ways of thinking about how you want to work this. You can either think of the yarn you want to use or fall in love with the yarn and then start knitting it up. And if you're wondering what needle size to use with any given yarn, a good place to start is by looking on the yarn label, the yarn ball band, and they'll give you a suggested needle size there. Start with that. If you decide you want tighter gauge, looser gauge, you can adjust your needle size from there. No problem. Just get what you like. The other thing you can do is we have a huge benefit to this pattern. This pattern's been out for a while, and thousands of people have already knit it and posted their results on Ravelry. So you can go to the Ravelry page for this pattern. I'll give you a link to all this. And take a look at the photos other people have posted. You can benefit from what they've already figured out. You can either find a picture you like, what someone else has done, take a look at the yarn they used, the gauge they had, the size of blanket that they knit, etc., and use their information as a guideline. Because if your gauge is a little different from theirs, your results might vary, but it's a good place to start. And if you end up with a little bit of extra yarn, it's not a problem. You can always make a hat out of it or something. Now, I'll also give you the details to how this blanket worked out, but you all seem to appreciate it when I tell you my knucklehead knitting stories, because I definitely have one for this blanket. You see how I did this. I start out with the lightest color in the center, and it gradually goes out to darker color. And that was my idea. That was my vision for this blanket. And I was teaching a class at my favorite local yarn store, Gauge Knits, here in Austin, Texas, and I knew I was going to buy yarn for this pattern after my class was over. So I had my colors picked out, but apparently I had used all of my brain power teaching the class, because when I went to buy the yarn, I bought 3 hanks of each color. Those of you who are thinking ahead already see the knucklehead move here. If you want to do a blanket that has that fades out like this one does, you're going to need far less yarn for the center than for the outside bands. That makes a lot of sense now, but it didn't even occur to me at the time, buying 3 hanks of each. So just kind of going with it and not really wanting to return the yarn, this is a baby blanket size. I did the cream color border on the outside. And it turns out that people I've shown the blanket to say that they like it better that way. I'm fine with it. I think it looks good. Being flexible with the colors definitely worked to my advantage here, not having to drive back to the yarn store. Okay, if you get your free pattern, yarn, needles, we're going to start out right with the beginning of this blanket and walk through the whole first section of it. And we're going to start that in the next section. Okay, we're ready to get started with this blanket, and I'm going to walk you through the entire first section, which is where people start and end up giving up because the hardest part is right at the beginning. Let's go ahead and take a look. I want to show you how this is put together and the construction of this. This is actually the cast on right here, and you're going to work ridges and then a mitered corner, more ridges, mitered corner, ridges, mitered corner, and we connect it to itself as we go around. There are never more than 10 stitches at a time on the needles for this blanket, which is why I ended up knitting mine entirely on double pointed needles. You can use circulars or straights. I like to use the shortest needle possible, which is why I stuck to double pointed needles. There's a little bit of risk of stitches sliding off one of the two ends, but I didn't have a problem with it, but if they do slide off, it's only 10 stitches to pick up. So this is the front. The front of the blanket really shows what I call the bones of the blanket. The back of the blanket, you can see, still very pretty, but you don't get the ridges. Yeah, you get a ridge. They're both pretty. Both sides seem like the right side on this. Okay. So if you take a look at your pattern, it says cast on 10 stitches, and slipping all first stitches, knit 9 ridges. And that's exactly what I've done here. I got a snag in my work. That's exactly what I've done here. I'm going to encourage you throughout this pattern, don't count rows, count ridges. You see these ridges here? It's all in garter stitch. These are garter stitch ridges, and they're made by knitting 2 rows, down and back. That gives you 1 ridge. So give your row counter a rest, take it easy, use just the easy way to count ridges here rather than counting rows. I will tell you that if you want to count rows on this first little section, that is fine. The pattern tells you to knit 9 ridges or 18 rows. But keep this in mind, your cast on will create half of a ridge. So it's actually casting on and knitting 17 rows. So once you get that, you're here and you're ready to go. This is the easiest part. I'm not going to demonstrate this part. Slip the first stitches, knit 9 ridges. Let's take a look at the pattern really quickly because there's something I don't want you to miss. And it is, yeah, near the end. It's the second page, near the end of the pattern, really. She gives you row by row instructions for the mitered corners, okay? So this is what you want to follow if you are keeping count of your rows, which I encourage for the mitered corners only, because it is 18 rows and then 16 rows. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do right now. On this little piece, we're going to work a mitered corner to get us here, and then a mitered corner to get us here. This is the only part of the blanket where we're going to work 2 mitered corners in a row. So row 1, I'm going to slip 1, and that means I'm going to slide it from the left needle to the right without working it. And you always want to slip purlwise unless the pattern tells you otherwise. So I'm going to slip 1, knit 8, and then I'm going to do a wrap and turn. But don't worry, because I'm not going to be picking up these wraps. I know people don't mind doing short rows, but they don't like picking up the wraps. This blanket, you don't have to. You're going to yarn forward, slip that last stitch purlwise, and then it says yarn back and turn. Okay. Now we're going to work the wrong side row here. Slip 1 purlwise, then put the yarn back between the 2 needles. This is all spelled out in the pattern. And knit 9, which is to the end of the row. Now I want to keep track of actually which row. I'm going to flip my page. Okay, so now I have 1 stitch unworked. I'm going to have 2 stitches unworked here to help turn the corner. Just if you've never done a mitered corner before, just follow the instructions closely for the first part, and then you'll start to get what's happening. You won't need the pattern anymore. I just slipped 1. I'm going to knit 7 this time. and then I'm going to do another wrap and turn, not finishing up the end of this row. So pull the yarn forward between the two needles, slip one stitch, yarn back, and turn the work. Then row 4, I slip that stitch back, and you see I've given myself a little wrap around this stitch. Then I yarn back, and I'm going to knit 8. So you see what's happening here. On row 1, I knit 8. On row 3, I knit 7. On row 5, I'm going to knit 6. We're going to count down all the way to 1. Slip 1, knit 6. Whoops. Yarn forward, slip 1 purlwise, yarn back, turn the work. Then row 6, which is the wrong side of the work, slip 1 purlwise, yarn back, knit 7. I'm knitting with these giant needles. I wouldn't have chosen this to make a blanket this chunky myself. They really slow the knitting down for me. Row 7, slip 1, knit 5. Yarn forward, slip 1 purlwise, yarn back, turn the work. Slip 1 purlwise, yarn back, knit 6. Row 9, slip 1, knit 4. Yarn forward, slip 1 purlwise, yarn back, turn work. Slip 1 purlwise, yarn back, knit 5. Okay, we're almost there. Slip 1, knit 3, because we're on row 11. Yarn forward, slip 1 purlwise, yarn back, turn the work. Slip 1 purlwise, yarn back. This is all written out in the pattern, exactly the order to do things. But once you start to get a feel for what a wrap stitch looks like, it is easier. You don't have to think about each step. I'm going to slip 1 and knit 2. I actually lost count. And so I went and looked, and I saw that I had a wrap on this one and not a wrap on this one, so I knew this was my next one. Row 15, slip 1, knit 1, and wrap the 3rd stitch. Yarn back and knit 2. The rows are very short right now. Row 16, slip 1, knit 1. Oops, nope, I did that incorrectly. I'm sorry. It was slip 1 and wrap the 2nd stitch. I just slip 1, no knitting, wrapping the next stitch. Okay, so row 17 is the last row. Look at how cool this is. I love knitting in shapes. We're actually not going to slip 1 on row 17. We just knit that first one and wrap the next stitch. It looks like I already did that. Did I? Could have been an optical illusion. Okay, that is the first half of the mitered corner. And now we're going to work the second half to get us into a square and ready to start the other direction. And so row 1, we reverse the process on this, starting over with row 1. We slip 1, we knit 1, and you're going to put another wrap on this stitch. So it's exactly like we were doing before, except for we're going to add a stitch each time. And then row 3, slip 1, knit 2. Row 5, slip 1, knit 3. And you're going to start increasing that number every time. So that all the stitches are once again live and active on the needle. And nicely, Frankie has written this out row by row for us. So the first time you work it, first couple times you work it, you might want to use your row counter and make sure you're keeping count. If you're used to what wraps look like, you won't have to keep count because it's pretty easy to see the wraps if you know what you're looking for. That's why I use this big bulky yarn. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of these rows. You follow it row by row, and you'll see I've already turned a corner here. Finish that corner, and you'll work a second corner, and then we'll be ready to start on the flat sides of the blanket, which is really the bulk of this blanket. You've got the hardest part of the blanket behind you, the first 2 mitered corners. Now you're ready to start the flat side, the first flat side of the blanket, which at the beginning of the blanket is still pretty short. Let's go ahead and take a look. Here are my mitered corners here, and here's the flat side I'm going to start now. What's going to happen is I'm going to work across and pick up a stitch and decrease and work back, and that's going to attach it as I move along, with never more than 10 stitches on the needle. Now let's talk about attaching. And this is where, when you're working the flat side, we're going to count ridges, not rows. We worked 18 rows here for 9 ridges, the very beginning from the cast onto the blanket. We want to pick up 9 rows along here. This is what I do. I count, and this time I only have 9 to pick up because this is a very short side, but these little bumps in the fabric right here is where I know I want to pick up, and those slip stitches really help with seeing that. This is going to be the last one. Let me count down. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and I'm going to pick up 1 in the very, very corner. I very carefully count every time. If you are a more relaxed person, you might just go with it and not worry about it. I'm a counter, and I'm actually going to show you here in a moment. Is it this section? Let me check. I'm going to show you in this section. Now, I'm going to show you in the next section exactly how I use markers to make sure I'm always staying on 9 rows. But I want to show you here how to do the technique. I'm going to pick up 9 rows here. So I slip the first stitch and knit across 8 stitches. I'm going to slip the last stitch. Okay, this is where I'm going to connect it to the work. I'm going to pick up and knit a stitch right here in the very, very corner, which is different from how the other ones are going to go. So I put my needle in, wrap it and pull it through, and suddenly I have 11 stitches, which is too many. So I'm going to pass that last slip stitch over the stitch I just picked up, like binding 1 stitch off. Now I'm going to turn the work and work back. And this, we're going to pause this here because I want to show you something. You have 2 options for how you want to pick up the stitches. This one is a modified version of what's in the pattern, and it's what I used in my big blanket. It's a chain pickup, and this leaves you with a row of V's that all the way around the bones of the blanket. And this one's not going to be as easy to see. This is a little sample that I knit up using leftover bits of yarn at home when I was breaking down the pattern to really be able to explain it well. This is what the connecting stitch in the pattern looks like. It looks like twill. It looks like a long tail cast on or something. Just one half of the V in a pattern like that. So it's up to you how you want to do it. I found that I prefer the chain pickup. And the way that you, whichever one you decide, the way that makes the difference, the thing that makes the difference is this first stitch on the second row of that ridge. And to work the chain pickup, I'm going to slip that stitch and knit the other 9. To work the regular pickup, I just knit all 10. But I'm going to show you again here. Okay, so I just completed the first of the 9 pickups I want to do here. And this is something I do. I put a marker in that first one, that first ridge that I just made. So I know that's 1. So if I put my work down and come back to it, I know I have 8 more to do. Slip 1 and knit 8 again. Then to do the connecting stitch, I slip 1. I go over here and I'm going to pick up, this is like a normal pickup, I'm going to pick up in this loop right here. Just stab it in there. You can really stab it in anywhere you want as long as you're consistent. I like to stab it in right in the middle of that loop, of that bump at the end. I pick that one up, I pass the slipped stitch over, the one I just picked up, and then to do the chain connecting stitch, I slip the first stitch, yarn back, and knit all the rest. Okay. We can start to see the connecting stitch coming out here, and I can tell I've knit 1, 2 ridges of the 9 that I need to do. You'll continue that all the way to the end, work another mitered corner, and then the next one that you have to do, the next pickups you have to do are from the cast on row, which are really, it's really no different. You're just going to be picking up both legs of the V as you work across and pick up the stitches rather than poking into one of the garter stitch ridges. Then you'll work another mitered corner, and this is where it starts to get interesting because the sides are longer. And that's what we're going to talk about next, placing markers to keep really careful count as you move along. Okay, you've made it through the trickiest parts of the blanket. I just want to show you how I use stitch markers to keep really careful count in what I'm doing. And before I go any further, you don't have to keep the careful count that I keep. I like doing that. And if you're just more relaxed about your blanket and everything, that's fine. It's going to work out fine. In fact, with all of the counting and marking that I did, the whole blanket that I knit, I only would have lost 2 stitches. Everything turned out to be perfectly on track every time when I counted it. And it was only 2 stitches, 2 times in the blanket that I had to squeeze in an extra stitch because the count wasn't perfect. But I'm going to show you how to do it. Maybe you'll like it. It's kind of like a crossword puzzle or something for me. Let's take a look. Here's a blanket with a little bit more done, as you can see. Here, my first 2 corners, the first edge, another corner, picking up from the cast on edge, another corner, and it starts to get longer. And that's what most of this blanket is going to be, these long knitted sides. And the corners are fewer and farther between. So I'm ready to start this side. And this side I have, it's always a multiple of 9 to pick up. And I can see here that I have 9 once and 9 twice to pick up. I've already counted 9 ridges and placed a mark. Well, I went this way. I counted 9 ridges and placed a marker, and then counted 9 ridges, and as it gets longer, I'll be placing more markers to mark each section of 9. And after I work the first ridge and back, like I showed you in the last video, I always put a clippy marker to mark the first ridge. And then as I finish up 9, I put a clippy marker in the next section. So I always know right where I am. It's not totally necessary, but it does make it easier. If I am unsure about the count, the most I ever have to count back is 9. And as you get further into the blanket, it's kind of a bigger deal because you end up with dozens of stitches to pick up, and you don't want to have to count back through all of those each time. So that's how I do it. That's the markers here that I'm picking up and keeping track of how many I have picked up with clippy markers. And I'll give you a link to where you can find clippy markers like this. You can also use safety pins or scraps of yarn, but these are easier to take out than scraps of yarn. Okay, another thing I want to show you is changing color. And I will give you in the video description and on my website, I will give you specific instructions for how to work the rows when you're changing color. I just want to show you that you have options for how you want to do this. I wanted to work this blanket square, so I worked, there's my center square, there's my next square. I worked 3 strips all the way around to make a perfect square, and then I changed color. If you want to make this blanket rectangle, you could actually take the color around one more wrap and then change color here, and that will give you a rectangle shape to work from. It's really up to you. I just wanted to show you, but that is how I changed colors, was at the square. Does that make sense? Yes. The specific instructions for exactly how I worked the rows so that the right side of the work stays nice will be in the video description below and on my website. And next up, I'm going to show you the finishing work that I like to do when I'm making a machine washable and dryable blanket. I'm going to show you how to super secure your blanket so that it can be machine washed and dried if that's the kind of yarn that you chose to use. The one that I knit is a wool and synthetic blend, which is machine washable, and so this is what I did. The thing, I always tie knots and do this method. I've shown this in videos before because I would just be mortified if I gave someone a baby gift and they washed it and it started falling apart. So this is my super secure way of tying off the ends so nothing can come unraveled. Let's go ahead and take a look. I'm going to show you on this sample, which clearly isn't finished yet, but I can demonstrate. And I have my tapestry needle right here. I thought I was funny by doing that. I'm going to poke this end through to the back, because this I'm going to consider the front of the work. So to get started, I'll poke that through the back and weave it in back here. And if you're using a wool yarn that's going to be sticky and stick to itself and not be machine washed, you can just do a regular weaving in garter stitch. I'll give you a link to the video I have on that right here. This is the super secure way. I'm going to just weave this in just a couple of stitches. It's not even anything fancy. And then this is where the fancy trick comes in. I'm going to untwist the plies, half and half. And this is actually a wool yarn that's clearly sticky and doesn't need to be woven in like this. But if I wanted to be really secure, I could. This is a 2-ply yarn. I've separated the plies 2 and 2. I'm going to thread half of those plies onto the tapestry needle and then just take that half a stitch away so that the 2 ends are coming out of different places right next to each other. Then tie a double knot with those 2 ends and really pull it tightly. Don't break the yarn, just shy of breaking the yarn really. So that's really secure. And I can cut it really short and it can go in the washing machine and it's almost invisible. That's it, the 10-stitch blanket. Many thanks to Frankie for letting us use her pattern in this tutorial. Good luck.